No, I would not take anything for the time that I spent in the military. I thought it was. I still think today that it's a duty, attitude that you want to serve. That I felt kind of an obligation to my country.
My father was drafted in the U.S. Army right before World War II started, and he excelled up through the ranks very easily. He did not talk a lot about his time in World War II. He had a picture of himself. He was 22 years old, I think, when he entered, and there was a picture of him in his uniform that always sat on our desk bookcase in the den. And I knew that was very important because it was there all my life. It sat in the same place, that it was an important part of him.
I was 4 years old when we got electricity, and I had a brother, Earl, that went into service, and he had to go be examined the day they turned the lights on. But he got to see them turn the light on before he left home. And he was gone from home 30 months and 9 days from the time he left that day to be examined before he ever came back home. We never saw him in his uniform except picture. He had his discharge when he come home.
Mother and I, we were coming home, and we got home, and Daddy was sitting glued to the little radio, and Pearl Harbor had been bombed. And as I said, I had a brother that was 5 years older than me, and he was married and had this little boy. By 1944 then, of course, we were heavily involved in World War II, and my brother was drafted, and that's when Herb was 2. He joined the Navy because he told Daddy, he said, I believe that I would come near getting back home from the Navy than I would Army.
My experience with the military, I was going to school in Nashville after graduation. I graduated from Jackson County High School in 1965. I wasn't making too good, my grades weren't too good. I wasn't applying myself like I should. And at that time we had a draft system and a selective service board here in Gainesboro. The director was Miss Sarah Forkham, and she informed me that I was going to get drafted pretty soon if my grades didn't come up. So I decided to join the Army, and I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for basic training October the 30th, 1966.
My daughter was a freshman at Tennessee Tech, and English 101, she had to do a term paper. So she interviewed my father, who was 80 years old at that time, and she got a lot of information out of him that I did not know. One thing in particular, he was the technical supply officer, over 100 men, and he was sent in the South Pacific to Tinian Island right before the war broke out. And his job was to oversee these men loading bombs onto these airplanes. President Harry Truman, as the war went on, there came a time when they were trying to get Japan to surrender, but they would not. So we all know the atomic bomb was released over Hiroshima my father oversaw the loading of this atomic bomb known as Little Boy on the B-59, famous Enola Gay, and that was the bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima.
Went through basic training at Fort Campbell. Then I went to Fort Bliss, Texas, which is in El Paso, for some AIT, Advanced Individual Training is what that was called. From El Paso, Texas, after I finished my training there, I was scheduled to go to Fairbanks, Alaska for a 2-year, 18-month, 2-year tour. And we were waiting to go, we had our overcoats on, waiting to board the plane to go to Alaska, me and 4 other people. And they came right at the last minute as we were ready to go to Alaska and said, had change of plans, you're going to Okinawa.
They were assigned to a ship, and he was sent to radar school. And I can't remember what ship he was assigned to at first, but the boy whose name was in front of his or above his on the radar school list failed the final test, and they moved my brother up into his place and assigned him to his ship, which was the USS Warrington.
Well, I stayed in Okinawa for almost 3 months. It was supposed to be an 18-month tour in Okinawa, and one day the first sergeant came in and told me, he said, you're going back to the States. And I said, well, I just basically got here, First Sergeant. He said, well, you're going to Officer Candidate School. And I was one of the platoon leaders in basic training. And that was kind of one of the prerequisites then, that if they found anybody with any kind of leadership potential, that they would try to get them into Officer Candidate School. And that's what happened. Well, I came back, went through Officer Candidate School at Fort Gordon, Georgia. And I went from an enlisted man to second lieutenant. I graduated from Officer Candidate School on the 2nd of November of '67. Then after I graduated from Officer Candidate School, I stayed about 8 months there at Fort Gordon. From there, I got orders to go to Vietnam, and I stayed there for a year and 2 days. I was attached to the 9th Infantry Division, which was down in the south of Vietnam, mostly in the rice paddies. There wasn't a lot of jungle down in that part of the country. The jungle was up north, and rice paddies and things like that were basically what was where I was located.
A hurricane was coming up the East Coast. So they ordered all of the ships to sail into the eye of the hurricane because it's calm in the eye. And the USS Warrington sank. Now they did recover his body because we got his billfold and some papers that he had on him. And of course, was buried at sea. And I said, I watched a burial at sea, and it like to have on television, and nearly killed me. So I know a little something about loss due to war.
One of the interesting parts about the interview was, toward the end, how did he feel about his time in World War II? And he was getting irritable by her asking all these questions. And so in kind of he said, well, how do you think I felt? And my daughter, his granddaughter, said in the term paper, I know how I felt, very proud of my grandfather.
Came back to the States and was company commander there back at Fort Gordon for a year. And then I got out of service in 2nd of November of 1970. I've encouraged a lot of children over the years to go into the military because I don't think college is for everyone. We need people that can fix air conditioners and refrigerators and can weld. We've had several people that have given their life for this country here from Jackson County, in the Vietnam War especially. Good friend of mine, he was in the class ahead of me in high school, Charles Holland, who the library is named after. I talked with him a few days before he left for Vietnam, and he told me, he said, "I don't believe I'll be back." And that always struck me as, I said, "Why you'll be back?" And, I said, "Things will work out." And he wasn't there a few weeks, and he was gone. Another friend of mine was in the class behind me, Ben Stone, who the bridge is named after over here. Another one that gave his life for the country, and it's just I think you have to look at it as an obligation, as being an American, being part of the mission to try to do the right thing in a world situation, not just talking about here in Jackson County, but for everyone.